I love planting, I love the soil.
And I got a joy in just leaving my kitchen and coming in the back there and just harvesting and cooking.
Moi qui plante ça, moi ça manger comme moi voulais.
Profits are there, just have to know what crop to grow.
Plant the things that you really eat practically every day.
Well, the money that I'm getting from what I'm doing motivates me sometimes, because when I go to the bank with my check, I feel good.
As a woman in agriculture, you're planting, you have food, you're able to send your children to school, you're able to help communities, churches, school.
80% of St. Lucia is rural communities, and over 40% of households in St. Lucia are headed by women. So I think people were able to absorb the idea even more because they had a grandmother or aunt or mother who was able to pay for schooling for them or help them financially due to farming.
A number of female farmers in St. Lucia are part of an organization called Helen's Daughters, founded by Keithlyn Carew. Adapting to climate change impacts is a key focus of the group as they seek to ensure farming has a strong future in St. Lucia. Climate change is having numerous impacts on the agriculture sector, ranging from changes in seasons to rainfall extremes, including more frequent and severe floods and droughts, to heat stress for livestock, increased pests and diseases, and soil degradation.
When you plant, you're worried about the weather, you're worried about pests, then you're worried about theft. When none of these three things happen, you don't know where to send it.
Whether you're a doctor or you're a lawyer, you're a nurse, you're a teacher, everyone has to consume food at least 3 times a day.
This is the battleground for food and nutrition security in St. Lucia. For fisherfolk, it is defined by coral reefs and other key fish habitat being degraded by the impacts of climate change and warmer temperatures, driving fish away to cooler waters.
Well, there are certain species of fish that we used to catch, which are almost extinct, almost non-existent.
The challenges became endless with the whole global warming, the water temperatures, the sargassum seaweed.
Healthy coral reefs are fundamental to a healthy fisheries sector. Coral reefs, however, are under threat by warmer waters caused by climate change, as well as numerous local impacts. To help protect and restore St. Lucia's reefs, the Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project, DVRP, supported the development of a reef enhancement plan for the Caribbean coast of St. Lucia, including a site-specific plan for an area with high restoration potential. Additionally, the DVRP is building the capacity required to undertake large-scale coral reef restoration through training persons in coral reef gardening and restoration and development of a Level 2 National Vocational Qualification. For farmers, more frequent and severe droughts is one of the greatest challenges posed by climate change. In the last 11 years, there have been 4 drought events in St. Lucia. In 2010, 2014, 2016, and 2020. The 2020 drought had a particularly devastating impact on farmers.
In my lifetime, that's the worst drought I have seen.
I mean, the drought was for an extended period, so we are now getting back into production after 3 months. At the time, we just had to make a decision to cut down on production, which affected income, which affected our ability to provide to our key customers.
The heat was intensive. The wind was strong, usually April, May, when you have calm wind, it dries up the land, and the rain hardly fell.
And extended dry periods have been highly destructive and damaging to food security. Farmers are at the mercy of the elements. Extreme rain events have been devastating. Sometimes they experience both extremes within months.
So at any given time, this area where we're standing could be flooded, and you can lose the entire investment. And this happens at least once or twice annually.
As climate change becomes a reality for us, as weather patterns change and as the floods and winds come, it is anticipated that we would pay attention to these shifts. There is data that is being collected, so we use it to guide our actions.
The Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Rural Development is working with farmers to help them implement adaptation measures to reduce the impacts of climate change on their farms. The Disaster Vulnerability Reduction Project, DVRP, is also working directly with farmers to increase their resilience by providing affordable financing to implement adaptation measures through its Climate Adaptation Financing Facility, the CAF, accessed via the St. Lucia Development Bank. Adaptation measures are guided by St. Lucia's Sectoral Adaptation Strategy and Action Plan for the agriculture sector 2018 to 2028. Significantly, in September 2021, a major project, Building Resilience for Adaptation to Climate Change and Climate Variability in Agriculture in St. Lucia, was launched. The close to US $10 million project, funded through the Adaptation Fund, includes 3 integrated components that will focus on interventions for water security, soil conservation and management, inclusion of solar energy in farming, and capacity building. Rainwater harvesting systems and greenhouses are some of the measures recommended by the Ministry and supported by the CAF to help mitigate the impacts of rainfall extremes, soil degradation, and increased pests and diseases. A rainwater harvesting system collects and stores rainwater for later use. These simple and affordable systems can help to ensure farmers never have to go without water, even in dry spells. Through the DVRP's Rainwater Harvesting Pilot Program, a code of practice for rainwater harvesting and training manual were developed, as well as training provided to plumbers to build capacity to support more widespread and safe installation of rainwater harvesting systems. In addition, farmers can easily access the Climate Adaptation Financing Facility, the CAF, to fund installation of rainwater harvesting systems at their farms.
The greenhouse in particular is one of those things that have been advocated here in St. Lucia for the last few decades. And this is one of the things we want to continue encouraging farmers. The upfront investment might seem a little steep, but the trickle-down benefits are unimaginable. On this particular holding, we have up to 12 or 15 greenhouses. And what the farmer has very cleverly done is to set up troughs in between the greenhouses, and these troughs have been concreted, and the water from the trough is fed into a nearby pond. What we're seeing here is roof water is collected, none of it is wasted. It is placed in a storage pond, from the storage pond treated, and it is reintroduced into the greenhouse to provide needed irrigation. One of the challenges we have in greenhousing is heat. So the intention is to put this mesh overhead in the greenhouse that is retractable. So on cloudy days, it could be retracted. On rainy days, you pull it off. The whole idea is to reduce the UV lights getting to the plants and allowing them a better opportunity to thrive, and also hopefully reduce the temperature within the growing space. These greenhouses have a slight adjustment. We've placed a mesh on the outside. So you would have observed that there's a mesh. The intention of the mesh is to keep out insect pests. So if you're able to keep out the butterflies, the lacewing insects and so on, will reduce caterpillar population, larvae population in the greenhouse, and of course reduce the use of pesticides in those particular areas.
Some people don't want to invest in those because when hurricane season, a lot of times these things are damaged. But there are structures that are cheaper to use, that you can remove the plastic film before the hurricane comes and so on, and if the structure is destroyed, you can build it up by using wood and so on, and these are things that we're actually discussing in our hydroponics class.
While severe rain events and other climate change-induced impacts are degrading our soils, there are actions farmers can take to fight back.
Right, so essentially this is what we call cocoa coir, or shredded coconut husk. One of the challenges that we do have is our soils are denuded over time. They lose their fertility, or in some cases the soil builds up a lot of pathogens, pest and disease problems, and it creates difficulty for us in terms of cultivation of crops. So one of the technologies that is advocated in collaboration with the greenhouse structure is what we call the soilless medium. The medium essentially is to anchor the plant. If you look closely at the bottom of each one of these bags, you'll see a drainage system. That drainage system carries any outflows or any excesses of the nutrient solution back to a central location where it is recycled, it is analyzed, and then it is fed back to the plants.
Hydroponics takes the concept of farming using soil-less media one step further. Hydroponics can also help farmers adapt not only to the challenge of soil degradation, but pests and drought.
So you plant in the water, you add your nutrients to the water, so there's no soil contact. And then so all the issues that one would have in planting in the soil where you have fungal issues, pests and diseases, you do not have that. So it's just water flowing through the root system with nutrients. And little or no chemical applied to the crop, so it's almost 100% organic. I sow my seedlings in what they call rock wool, and then it comes all without the hole, so we just put the seed in there. It takes 2 weeks to be ready to transplant out here. And then I just plant into the channel, and then this spaghetti tubing has water with the nutrients in here, and I just put it in here so water flows through. It goes round back to a central water tank with the nutrients in there, and it's pumped back to the entire system. No slugs because I'm fully enclosed. Yeah, no snails coming in. No soil fungus because it's water. Yeah, so it's just my insects I have to be wary of. We can use chemicals, but you use biological chemicals. Those are made from natural substances, or I use mechanical, which is that yellow sticky trap, so you have your flies, aphids will get stuck onto it.
While hydroponics may be a more expensive solution, through the St. Lucia Development Bank, farmers can access affordable loans to implement hydroponic systems or any other resiliency measure through the Climate Adaptation Financing Facility.
When I thought of going into hydroponics, I began my research on the internet. Then I went to SLDB's website, saw the requirements for the loan, so I sat down, I prepared my proposal, then went to them. I went to meet they call it relationship specialist. I went to see him, gave him my proposal, and then that was it.
In crop production, weeds provide a platform for the proliferation of pests and some disease problems. Some of these weeds actually harbor disease problems that when they interact with the plants, or when they're in the presence of the plants, the disease gets transferred by insects feeding. What the ground cover does is a couple of things. It covers up that soil so that, one, the weed growth is reduced. The farmer saves a lot because he no longer has to do weed control. There's reduced use of herbicides in our soil, and the associated destructive pathways for herbicides. What it also does, because the plants do not have to compete with weeds, they thrive better, less pesticides are being used, the farmer is able to get a better harvest. Also, in some cases, for example, the melons, the watermelons, the cantaloupes and the honeydew, because these are not interacting with soil, there's less field losses. So the farmer now is able to optimize his productivity. So rather than planting large acreages, he's able to plant a smaller acreage and get better output.
In addition to using ground covering, farmers are also encouraged to practice integrated pest management at their farms. Climate change is increasing the average global temperature. Depending on policy decisions and human behavior, by 2040, the average global temperature will increase by between 1.2 and 1.9 degrees Celsius, and by 2100, by between 1.0 and 5.7 degrees Celsius. As average global temperatures warm, heat stress is becoming an increasing threat to traditional outdoor livestock rearing.
Historically, we produce small ruminants, that would be sheep and goats, and of course chickens in open range and pigs as well. What we've done over the years is to promote housing for these animals. So what you saw at the Youth Entrepreneurial Project site is housing for small ruminants, sheep and goats. They're in enclosed spaces on slatted floors. A cut and carry system is used, meaning that you cut the forage and the silage for them and you feed them. These animals move less, so they build up their lean much more quickly. They do not interact with the soil, meaning that issues of foot and mouth and mastitis and so on do not become a problem. And of course, these are protected because the dogs come in and they eat them ever so often, so that provides that safety as well. As climate change, becomes a reality for us, as weather patterns change and as the floods and winds come, it is anticipated that we would pay attention to these shifts. And of course, it's part of a sustainable livelihoods approach because, for example, if bananas get tossed out in a wind situation, then your root crops are there to survive, to support you. This is an environment where you have both young and old people employed. We recognize, as has always been said, that we still have quite a few elderly people, but that does not stop agriculture from thriving. We need to bring on the new young minds, but not just the new young minds, provide opportunities for funding, for financing, so that these ideas, we could introduce them in terms of our production systems.